My name is Grace Miller. I'm 28 years old, and just a few months away from graduating nursing school. I had worked for years to get to this point, and finally, I was so close to reaching my dream. When winter break came, I packed up my little car with carefully wrapped gifts, a few bags of clothes, and a whole lot of excitement. Christmas had always been important to me, no matter how messy my family could be, and I was eager to get back home to celebrate. The drive from Chicago to Springfield, Missouri, where I grew up, usually took about 6 hours. Holiday traffic made it a bit longer, but I didn't care. I filled a thermos with hot coffee, loaded up my Christmas playlist, and tried to stay awake despite being tired from final exams and clinical rotations. I pictured the moment I'd arrive, Mom in the kitchen baking, Dad watching a football game, Ethan and Lily arguing over something silly, and Grandma Ruth sitting in her recliner with her knitting, the smell of cookies in the air, lights twinkling from the Christmas tree, and laughter filling the house. That was the home I was driving toward, or at least that's what I thought. But the second I pulled onto Maple Street, something felt wrong. The houses around ours were glowing with Christmas decorations. The Hendersons across the street had their usual over-the-top light display, and the Patels next door had lined their porch with bright icicle lights. But our house, it was dark. No wreath on the door, no lights in the windows, no glowing reindeer. On the lawn, I checked my phone to make sure I hadn't mixed up the date. It was December 23rd. Decorations should have been up for weeks. As I pulled into the driveway, another unsettling detail hit me. Only Dad's old Buick was parked there. Normally, I'd expect to see Mom's SUV, Ethan's beat-up Corolla, and maybe even Lily's boyfriend's truck. But the driveway looked half empty. A knot of worry formed in my stomach. Balancing bags of gifts in my arms, I walked up the front path. Even the sidewalk had a thin layer of snow that hadn't been shoveled. Dad usually took pride in clearing it quickly, but clearly, nobody had bothered this time. My chest tightened as I reached the front door, struggling with the handle while juggling all my bags. "Hello, I'm home," I called as I stepped inside. Silence. The living room was bare. No tree in the corner, no stockings on the mantel, no garland on the staircase. The air smelled faintly of microwave food instead of cinnamon and pine. My heart sank. Then I heard a familiar voice from the kitchen. "In here, dear." It was Grandma Ruth. I dropped my bags in the hallway and rushed toward her voice. There she was, sitting at the table in her everyday house dress, eating a plate of microwaved turkey and stuffing. No Christmas outfit, no sparkle in her eyes like usual. Just quiet. "Grandma, where is everybody? What happened to the decorations?" I asked, my throat tight. Her face, lined with 82 years of life, held an expression I couldn't quite read, somewhere between embarrassment and anger. She set her fork down, sighed, and said softly, "Oh, Grace, I'm so sorry you came home to this. They left yesterday." "Left? What do you mean left?" She pointed toward the refrigerator. "Look for yourself." Pinned under a souvenir magnet was a note, written in my mom's flowy handwriting with little flower doodles in the corners. I pulled it off and read aloud, "Grace, sweetie, last-minute amazing deal on a Caribbean cruise. Couldn't pass it. Up used your loan money. Think of it as our family Christmas gift. Grandma couldn't go, so take care of her. Back in 4 days. Love you bunches, Mom, Dad, Ethan, and Lily." I blinked, reading it again. Surely I misunderstood. Surely this was a joke. But it wasn't. They had taken the $10,000 student loan. I had worked so hard to secure money meant for my final semester, my clinicals, my exams, and spent it on a cruise. My knees felt weak. "But that was my school money," I whispered. "That's my future. How could they just?" Grandma Ruth's voice was firm. "They did. They took it. And now we're going to deal with it." I wanted to believe this wasn't real. But just then, my phone buzzed. I looked down to see a notification from social media. My family had just tagged me in a photo. There they were, all four of them, standing on a cruise ship deck with leis around their necks, holding tropical drinks, smiling like they didn't have a care in the world. My mum's caption read, "Surprise Christmas vacation." So blessed, my stomach turned. "They didn't even take you," I said to Grandma, glancing at her frail body in the chair. "The doctor said my hip wouldn't handle the ship, so they decided to go without me," she replied, a bitter smile tugging at her lips. "Your dad promised to bring me back a souvenir." It hit me all at once, the betrayal, the loss, the realization that everything I had worked for could come crashing down because of their selfishness. My chest felt heavy, my hands shook, and I grabbed the counter to steady myself. "Grace, sit down before you fall down," Grandma ordered, slipping into her nonsense tone. I sank into the chair across from her. My voice was small. They stole from me. My own family stole from me. Grandma Ruth met my eyes, unflinching. "Yes, and we're not going to let them get away with it." But all I could think about was the future crumbling in front of me. Without that money, I couldn't register for my last clinical rotations. Without clinicals, I couldn't graduate. Without graduation, no license, no nursing job. For years of sacrifice gone in one selfish act. I rushed to check my account on my phone, my fingers trembling. Sure enough, the transfer was right there. $9,876 withdrawn 3 days ago to a travel agency. They hadn't just dipped into it. They had taken every single dollar. I tried calling Mum, no answer. Dad, straight to voicemail. Ethan, Lily, nothing. Each call went unanswered. Each text message was left unread. Meanwhile, more vacation photos popped up online. Swimming with dolphins, dinners on the ship. Every photo was like another knife in my back. I buried my face in my hands, shaking my head. How could they do this to me, Grandma? How could they? She reached across the table, her wrinkled hand covering mine. "Because they've always taken from you, Grace, and you've always let them. But this time it's different. This time, they've gone too far." Her words stayed with me as the room grew quiet. She was right. This wasn't just about $10,000. It was about a lifetime of them using me, taking from me, and expecting me to forgive and move on. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't sure I could. That night, after I unpacked my bags into my childhood bedroom, I sat on the edge of the twin bed, staring at the walls that hadn't changed since high school. Posters of famous nurses I once looked up to, shelves full of old textbooks, and a corkboard still pinned with my acceptance letters to college. It felt like stepping back into the past, only this time I wasn't that hopeful teenager anymore. I was a grown woman on the edge of achieving everything I had worked for, and now it all felt like it was slipping away. The tears came hard. Not just quiet tears, but the kind that shake your whole body, the kind that leave you gasping for breath. I cried for the betrayal, for the years of sacrifice, for the hours I had worked 3 jobs just to keep myself afloat. And most of all, I cried for the realization that my own family, the people who should have been my biggest support, had chosen a vacation over my future. At some point, I heard a gentle knock on my door. Grandma Ruth stepped in, holding a mug of chamomile tea. She didn't say much. She just sat down next to me, her hand rubbing circles on my back like she used to when I was a little girl with nightmares. "Let it out, Grace," she whispered. "You've earned these tears." And so I did. I cried until my body couldn't cry anymore, until all that was left was a hollow ache in my chest. When I finally stopped, she handed me the tea and a tissue. "Now," she said firmly, "we talk for the next 2 hours." We did. She reminded me that this wasn't the first time my family had taken from me. Deep down, I knew that too. The pattern had been there for years. I had just chosen to look past it because they were family. I remembered when I was 16 and saved up $800 from working at the library to buy my first laptop. Dad had borrowed that money for an investment opportunity, and I never saw it again. Then there was the college fund. My parents had started one when I was born, but by the time I was ready for school, only $3,000 was left. The rest gone used for vacations, remodeling the kitchen, or Ethan's car. Grandma nodded knowingly. "And your first car," she added. That memory stung too. I had worked 2 years to buy that used Honda, and Dad would borrow it all the time. One time, he returned it with the transmission ruined. Fixing it cost more than the car was worth, and he never paid me back like he promised. Then there were the smaller betrayals. Ethan borrowing money for textbooks and paying me back months late. Lily using my credit card for what she called an emergency, but turned out to be concert tickets. Each time I forgave them. Each time I made excuses. "Because you love them," Grandma said softly. "But Grace, love doesn't mean being a doormat." Her words cut deep. She went on to share her own stories. How years ago, Dad had convinced her to sell her house and move in with them, promising to renovate the den into her private space. But most of the money from selling her house went to paying off their credit card debt instead. How sometimes her Social Security checks mysteriously disappeared before she could deposit them. How her jewelry, even her wedding ring, had gone missing during tough financial months. "Why didn't you ever say anything?" I asked, shocked. She gave me a sad smile. "For the same reason you haven't. Love, shame, and hope that maybe, just maybe, next time would be different." The truth of her words hit me hard, as if to mock me. My phone buzzed again with more social media updates. Photos of my family ziplining through the forest, laughing together at a fancy dinner, swimming with dolphins. In every picture, they looked carefree, like they hadn't just destroyed my future, like I didn't even exist. I threw the phone onto the bed in disgust. They're not even answering me. They're just ignoring me like I'm nothing. They know what they did was wrong, Grandma said, her voice steady. "It's easier to pretend everything's fine than to face the truth." That night, sleep was impossible. I lay on my bed, staring at the glow-in-the-dark stars I had stuck to my ceiling when I was 12. My mind raced. What if I had to drop out this close to graduation? What if I lost my place in clinical rotations? What if I had to take a year off just to save up again? Every option felt impossible. Around midnight, I heard Grandma on the phone. In the hallway, her voice was sharper than I'd ever heard before. "David James Miller, you answer this phone right now. Don't you dare hang up on me. I know the ship has service. Put Karen on 2Y. Want you both to hear this." Her voice dropped too low for me to hear the rest, but I could tell she was furious. For the first time in years, maybe decades, she wasn't protecting them. She was standing up for me. The next morning, I woke up to the smell of coffee and something sweet baking. For a moment, I forgot everything and thought maybe it had been a bad dream. But then reality hit me again, and the hollow ache returned, dragging myself downstairs. I found Grandma Ruth already dressed in one of her nice pantsuits, her white hair brushed neatly, makeup on, and notebooks spread across the kitchen table. My laptop was open in front of her, and a plate of cinnamon rolls sat cooling on the counter. "You're up," she said without looking away from the screen. "Coffee's fresh. Grab some and join me." I poured myself a mug and sat down, still. "Half asleep, you seem. Energized," I said slowly. "I am," she replied, finally looking up at me. Her eyes behind her glasses were sharp and determined. "I was up at 5 this morning. Planning what?" She turned the laptop toward me. "Operation Consequences." On the screen was a spreadsheet with multiple tabs. Financial, options, legal steps, action items, resources. A whole plan, neat and organized. I blinked. "You made this." "Don't look so surprised," she said with a smirk. I've been taking computer classes at the community center for years. You didn't think I was just playing bridge with my friends, did you? Despite my exhaustion, I laughed. Grandma, this is incredible. This, she said firmly, tapping the screen, is how we fix this mess your family created. She explained the plan in detail. First, she had a modest savings account money she had kept, hidden from my parents. Not a fortune, but enough to cover your tuition temporarily if we can't get your money back in time. Grandma, no. That's your retirement money. I'm not giving it to you. I'm lending it to you. With proper documentation. And your parents will repay me every penny with interest. Her voice had steel in it. There was no arguing. Besides, she added, her tone softening, what good is my future if I don't help secure yours? You're the only one in this family who has shown real responsibility. You're my best investment, Grace. Tears welled in my eyes, but this time they weren't from pain. I don't even know what to say. Say you'll stop being a doormat, she replied bluntly. Her words hit me like a lightning bolt. For the first time, I saw things clearly. This wasn't just about saving myself. It was about breaking the cycle. Grandma Ruth leaned closer, her eyes steady. They've taken advantage of me too, Grace, for years. But enough is enough. This time, there will be consequences. And, just like that, the hollow ache inside me began to fill with something else, something stronger. Determination. The next morning, the world outside was quiet, covered in a thin blanket of snow. Normally, I loved mornings like that, the crisp air, the smell of coffee, the peaceful calm that came with winter. But not this time. This time, it felt like the calm before a storm. Grandma Ruth and I sat at the kitchen table, both of us with steaming mugs in front of us. She had her notebook open, her pen tapping against the paper, and I could see the wheels turning in her mind. She wasn't just my sweet grandmother in that moment. She was a force of nature. All right, she said, adjusting her glasses. Step 1, we change the locks. Change the locks, I repeated, startled. She nodded firmly. They took all the house keys with them when they left. Grace, you think they'll hesitate to walk right back in when they return? No, they've treated this place like theirs to control for years. But it isn't just theirs, it's mine too, and yours while you're here. We are not letting them waltz back in without consequences. I swallowed hard. The thought of changing the locks on my parents terrified me, but at the same time, it made sense. For the first time, I'd have control of something they'd always taken for granted. Grandma pulled out her phone and made a call to her friend Martin, a retired locksmith from her church. Within a few hours, he showed up, an older man with calloused hands and kind eyes. He shook my hand firmly and said, Eleanor filled me in. Terrible thing, family doing that to you. Don't worry, we'll get you taken care of. Watching him work, drilling out the old locks and replacing them with new ones, gave me a strange sense of peace. When he installed the new electronic keypad on the front door, showing us how to set and reset the code, I realized this wasn't just about locks. This was about boundaries. For the first time in my life, I could control who got access, instead of being at the mercy of everyone else's decisions. By the time Martin left, Grandma and I both felt a little stronger. One small step, but it mattered. Now, Grandma said, flipping her notebook open again. Step 2, documentation. She pulled out a camera and started snapping photos of everything. The bare living room with no Christmas tree, the half-empty fridge, the unpaid bills stacked on the counter, the note my mum had left on the refrigerator. Why are we doing this? I asked. Evidence, she said simply. If your parents try to twist the story later, or if we need legal help, this will prove what happened. No one will be able to say we exaggerated. She was right. For years, I had let things slide because I didn't have proof. But this time, we were leaving nothing to chance. Later that day, Grandma's friend Terry came over. She was a retired attorney with sharp eyes and an even sharper mind. She listened patiently as I explained what happened, then pulled out a leather portfolio from her bag. "We're going to draft a repayment agreement," she said, matter-of-factly. "A repayment agreement?" I repeated. "Yes." They took $9,876 from your account. This document will lay out a repayment, plan dates, amounts, consequences if they fail to pay. It will be legally binding. The thought of handing my parents a contract made my stomach twist, but Terry was calm and confident. "This isn't about revenge," she explained. "It's about accountability. If you don't set boundaries now, they'll never stop." When she left, she handed me a folder with the first draft of the agreement. Just seeing it in writing gave me a strange sense of relief. For once, I wouldn't just be begging for what was mine. I'd be demanding it with the law behind me. That night, over a simple dinner, Grandma looked across the table at me and said, "Now comes the hardest part, emotional preparation." She was right. Changing locks and writing contracts was one thing. Facing my family standing up to them was another. "They'll cry, Grace," she said, her eyes serious. "They'll yell, they'll try to guilt you. They'll tell you you're overreacting. They'll make promises they don't plan to keep. You've got to be ready for all of it." My hands shook a little as I set down my fork. What if I can't do it? What if I give in, like I always do? Grandma reached across the table, her hand warm on mine. "You can, and you will, because this time, you're not alone. I'll be right beside you." Her words wrapped around me like a blanket. For the first time since I had arrived, I felt like maybe, just maybe, I could do this. The next day, the plan grew bigger. Grandma started calling in her network friends from church, her bridge club, even the ladies from her book group. She called it her backup army. Terry, the lawyer, was helping finalize the repayment contract. Martin, the locksmith, was on standby in case anything else needed securing. Beth, a retired social worker, offered to coach me on handling emotional confrontations. "Elderly doesn't mean powerless," Grandma said with a proud smile. And she was right by the end of the day. We had not only changed the locks and prepared legal documents, but we also moved valuables, family heirlooms, jewelry, important papers out of the house and into a safe deposit box at Grandma's bank. We weren't leaving anything for my parents to borrow again. As we sat in the living room that evening, going over the timeline for when my parents would return, a cold wave of anxiety washed over me. "They're going to hate me," I whispered. Grandma shook her head firmly. "No, Grace. They're going to learn from you. There's a difference. You're not doing this to punish them. You're doing it to save them from themselves, and to save yourself." That night, instead of crying, we practiced. Grandma role-played as my dad, loud, demanding, dismissive. Then as my mum, tearful, manipulative, guilt-tripping. Then as my siblings, deflecting responsibility. With each round, I practiced standing firm. My answers grew steadier, my voice stronger. By the time we went to bed, I felt something new. I felt prepared, and as I lay in my bed, staring at the glow-in-the-dark stars, I realized something I'd never realized before. This wasn't just about $10,000. This was about years of letting them walk over me. This was about finally saying enough. 2 more days, I thought, my heart pounding. 2 more days until they came home. 2 more days until everything changed. The last 2 days before my parents were due back felt like waiting for a storm you knew was coming. Every hour dragged. Every little sound in the house made me jump. Grandma, Ruth, and I kept busy with our plan, but no amount of planning could erase the nerves twisting in my stomach. On the morning of day 3, Grandma slid a plate of scrambled eggs in front of me and said, "Eat. You'll need your strength." I pushed the food around with my fork. "I don't know if I can do this, Grandma. What if they scream at me? What if they tell me I'm ungrateful? What if they cut me off completely?" Her eyes softened, but her voice was steady. Grace, you've been afraid of those things your whole life. And look where it got you, crying in your old bedroom because they took your future away without a second thought. Enough. This time, you stand tall, no matter how they react. I swallowed hard and nodded. She was right. That afternoon, her friend Beth, the retired social worker, came over. She had a no-nonsense vibe, the kind of woman who had probably seen it all in her career. She sat me down at the kitchen table and said, "Listen, they're going to push your buttons, Grace. They know exactly how to do it because they installed those buttons. But you can take your power back. You don't have to let them control your emotions." She had me practice again, this time with her playing my mother, tears streaming down her face, saying things like, "After everything we've done for you, this is how you treat us." My heart squeezed at how real it felt, but I forced myself to answer calmly. "This isn't about the past," I said, steadying my voice. "This is about the $10,000 you took from me. We'll talk about the house after you agree to pay it back." Beth leaned back, smiling a little. "Good, that's it. Stay focused. Keep bringing it back to the money. No guilt-tripping, no distractions." I felt stronger with every practice run. It was like exercising a muscle I hadn't used in years. Later that night, Grandma checked the cruise ship tracker online. "They're docking tomorrow morning in Miami," she reported. "Their flight gets in late afternoon. That means they'll be home by dinner." My stomach dropped. Tomorrow, it's really happening. She reached over and squeezed my hand. "Tomorrow, we draw the line." The next morning, I woke up before my alarm, my body buzzing with nerves. Outside, snow had started falling again, dusting the street in white. It should have been beautiful. Instead, it felt surreal, like time had slowed just to make me more anxious. By mid-morning, Grandma's backup army began arriving. Terry, the lawyer, came with her legal folder. Beth returned to give me another pep talk. Martin stopped by to make sure the locks were secure. Even a few ladies from Grandma's bridge club came, not to interfere, but to sit quietly in the living room as moral support. I looked at all of them, this grey-haired army that had shown up for me, and my throat tightened. "Why are you all doing this?" I asked. Terry adjusted her glasses and said simply, "Because Eleanor has been there for each of us, and now it's our turn." For the first time, I didn't feel like a scared daughter about to face her parents. I felt like I had a team behind me. Around 5 p.m., my phone buzzed. A text from my mum. "Landing now. See you soon. Can't wait to tell you all about the trip. Love you." No mention of the money, no apology. Just cheerful, like nothing had happened. Grandma glanced at the message, then looked at me. "And so it begins." By 6 p.m., the home security camera sent an alert. A car had pulled into the driveway. My heart pounded so hard, it felt like it was in my throat. I peeked through the curtain. There they were, my parents, sunburned from the Caribbean sun, Ethan lugging a suitcase, Lily clutching a shopping bag full of souvenirs. They were laughing, talking loudly, their faces relaxed like they'd just had the time of their lives. My knees went weak. Grandma stepped beside me, her small hand wrapping around mine. "Remember who you are," she whispered. "Remember what you deserve." The doorbell rang, then rang again, louder this time. "Grace, we're home," Mum called, her voice cheerful. "Open up, it's freezing out here." I pressed the intercom button on the new keypad system, my hands trembling but my voice steady. "I can see you." My dad stepped closer to the door, rattling the knob. "Why aren't the keys working? Did you change the locks?" "Yes," I said simply. "We need to talk before you come in." His face flushed red under his tan. "This is ridiculous. We've been traveling all day. Let us in right now, Grace." "You can come in," I said slowly, "but only after we discuss the money you took from my account." The four of them froze, their smiles fading. My mom's eyes darted nervously. Ethan shifted uncomfortably. Lily bit her lip. "What are you talking about, honey?" Mum asked, her voice sickly sweet. "Let us inside, and we'll talk about whatever's bothering you." I didn't budge. "I'm talking about the $10,000 you took from my student loan for your cruise. The money I need to finish nursing school. The money you didn't even ask me about." There was silence for a long moment. My dad recovered first, his salesman tone kicking in. "Now listen here, Grace. We didn't steal anything. That was a family account. We just used it for a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. We deserve a vacation after everything this year. That doesn't explain why you didn't ask me," I said firmly. "Or why you left Grandma here without care." "She was fine," Mom said quickly, her eyes wet. "And of course we were going to pay you back." "Sweetie, you're blowing this way out of proportion. We're family. We share things." Before I could respond, Grandma's voice cut in sharp as a knife. "No, family doesn't steal. Family doesn't abandon their mother like a house. Family doesn't gamble their daughter's future for a few days in the sun." My dad's face darkened. "Mom, stay out of this. This is between us and Grace." "You left me here too, David," she snapped. "You don't get to push me aside." Ethan finally spoke, his voice low. "This is stupid. It's our house too. You can't lock us out." "Actually, I can," I said, surprising myself with how steady my voice was. "And I will until you agree to pay me back." My mom's jaw dropped. "Repay you? We were always going to pay you back eventually. You don't need to make this so formal. We have an agreement prepared," I said calmly. "You'll review it, sign it, and then we'll talk about coming inside." "This is insane," Dad barked. "You don't treat family like this." I took a deep breath, channeling Grandma's strength. "Family doesn't treat me like an ATM either. This is the only way forward." Through the window I could see the neighbors starting to notice the Patels watching from their porch, the Henderson kids pressed to the glass. The humiliation of being locked out of their own house clearly stung my parents. My mum leaned toward the camera, her voice desperate. "Please, Grace, let us in. It's freezing out here." "Coffee shop," I said firmly. 3 blocks away. 15 minutes. We'll meet there to discuss the agreement. Otherwise, you're not coming in." They huddled together, whispering furiously. Finally, my mum turned back. "Fine, but only you, not your grandmother's friends. Non-negotiable," I said. "Grandma and Terry are coming with me." Their shoulders slumped in defeat. They trudged back to the car, hauling their luggage. My hands shook, my chest tight, but for the first time, I felt powerful. As their car pulled away, Grandma squeezed my hand again. "You did it," she whispered. "You held your ground." I nodded, my heart racing. "And now we finish this." 15 minutes later, I was sitting in the back corner of Magnolia Coffee, the small cafe 3 blocks away from the house. The place was decked out in Christmas lights and pine garlands, soft holiday music playing in the background. Normally, it would have been cozy, but right then, it felt like the stage for the most important showdown of my life. Grandma Ruth sat on one side of me, calm and steady, her hands folded neatly on the table. On my other side was Terry, her leather portfolio open, papers neatly stacked, pen ready. Across from us sat my family, my parents, my brother Ethan, and my sister Lily. The contrast between us was almost laughable. My parents were still sunburned from the cruise, wearing touristy t-shirts, souvenir bags piled beside them. Ethan looked uncomfortable, slouched in his chair, while Lily fidgeted, clearly nervous. They had come from paradise, straight into reality. And reality wasn't smiling. My dad leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. "This is ridiculous," he said immediately. "We don't need lawyers or paperwork. We're family." Terry didn't even blink. She slid the repayment agreement across the table and said calmly, "This isn't about family. This is about accountability. Your daughter's student loan was drained without her permission. This agreement outlines how you're going to pay it back. My mom's jaw dropped. Accountability. We weren't stealing. It was a misunderstanding. I leaned forward, my voice steady. What part of it was a misunderstanding, Mom? The part where you knew it was my loan money? Or the part where you didn't ask me? Or maybe the part where you left Grandma behind without care? She flinched, her eyes darting away. Ethan finally spoke up, his voice sharp. Look, what's done is done. The money is spent. You can't magically get it back right now. That's why there's a repayment plan, Terry cut in smoothly. She tapped the folder with her pen. It requires an immediate good faith payment, followed by monthly installments until the debt is repaid. My dad barked a laugh. Good faith payment? With what? You think we're sitting on piles of cash? Grandma Ruth's eyes narrowed. You changed your flights, didn't you? She asked quietly. My parents froze. Mum swallowed. Yes, David had a work emergency, so we came back early. Which means you have refunds coming, Grandma said firmly. That refund will go directly to Grace as your first repayment. The silence at the table was heavy. My dad's face darkened again. That's not nearly enough. And these terms, he flipped through the agreement, his frown deepening. These terms are outrageous. There's no way we can pay this much this quickly. Then we'll pursue other options, Terry said, her voice even, including reporting unauthorized use of federal student loan funds, which can trigger investigations by both the school and the lender. I don't think you want that kind of trouble. My mum paled. You wouldn't do that to your own family. I looked her straight in the eye. I don't want to, but you left me no choice. I was supposed to graduate in 3 months. Because of you, I almost lost everything. You don't get to pretend this isn't serious. For the first time, Lily spoke up. Her voice was soft, but clear. Mum, Dad, she's right. We took her money without asking. That was wrong. The words seemed to hang in the air. My mum looked at her youngest daughter like she had betrayed her. My dad shifted uncomfortably. Ethan stared at the table. Terry took advantage of the pause. This agreement is not negotiable. Sign it, make the first repayment, and you'll have a clear path forward. Refuse, and Grace has every right to pursue legal action. The choice is yours. My dad's face turned red. You can't treat us like criminals. We're your parents, Grace. Something inside me hardened. I leaned forward, my voice calm but strong. What exactly have you done for me, Dad? You drained my college fund. You borrowed my car and returned it broken. You've taken from me every chance you've had. And now you took my student loan, the one thing standing between me and the life I've been working for. So don't talk to me about respect when you've never respected me. For once, he had no comeback. His mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. Terry cleared her throat. We'll need signatures now. The silence stretched. My mum finally reached for the pen, her hand trembling. Fine, she muttered, signing the paper. But I want it noted that we were always going to pay her back. This formality is unnecessary. One by one, they all signed. My dad last, his face tight with anger. Good, Terry said, collecting the papers. Now we can move forward. Ethan leaned back with a groan. Can we just go home now? This is exhausting. Yes, I said, gathering the signed documents. But things will be different from now on. We walked back through the snow-covered streets in silence. The cafe's Christmas lights glowed behind us, but all I felt was the weight of what had just happened. My parents had signed, but this wasn't over. This was just the beginning. When we reached the house, Martin was waiting to explain the new security system. I handed my parents a temporary code. This is what you'll use until I decide otherwise. No permanent codes until I see consistent repayment. My mum frowned. This feels like punishment. This feels like consequences, I corrected. There's a difference. That night, the house was heavy with tension. My parents retreated to their room early, sulking. Ethan kept making awkward jokes, trying to lighten the mood, but they fell flat. Lily helped me prepare a simple dinner, her voice quiet when she finally said, "I really am sorry, Grace. I didn't realize how much we were all taking from you." I nodded, my throat tight. "It's not too late to change." She gave me a small smile. "Then I will." As I washed dishes with Grandma Ruth that night, she patted my shoulder. "This isn't about making them suffer, Grace. It's about making them grow." I looked at her, exhausted but strangely lighter. For the first time, I believed her. The first night after my family returned from their cruise was tense. No one really spoke much. The house, which I had once dreamed would be full of holiday laughter and the smell of sugar cookies, felt heavy and quiet. My parents stayed mostly in their room, unpacking their suitcases and whispering to each other. Ethan scrolled on his phone, occasionally trying to crack jokes that nobody laughed at. Lily, the only one making any effort, hovered in the kitchen with me and Grandma Ruth, helping to set the table for a simple dinner. It felt strange. The house belonged to me and Grandma now, and they were the guests. That realization both scared me and gave me strength. For the first time, I wasn't the one bending. The next morning, I taped a copy of the repayment agreement to the refrigerator. With a magnet. Grandma had insisted on it. "A constant reminder," she said firmly. "No one can claim they forgot or misunderstood." My dad came into the kitchen, saw the paper, and groaned. "Really, Grace? Do you have to plaster this on the fridge? Like it's a chore chart?" "Yes," I said, pouring myself coffee without looking at him, "because that's exactly what it is. A responsibility you agreed to." His jaw tightened. He wasn't used to me talking back. For the next week, little battles like that kept popping up. My mom complained about the new system I set up for paying household bills. "We've been managing just fine without your little spreadsheets." "Grace," she huffed. I raised an eyebrow. "Managing? You'd left unpaid bills stacked on the counter when you left for the cruise. That's not managing. That's neglect." She looked away, mumbling under her breath. Ethan was worse. One afternoon, I caught him trying to sneak money from the jar I had set aside for groceries. When I confronted him, he rolled his eyes. "Come on, Grace. It's just $20. Stop acting like the money police." I crossed my arms. "It's not about the $20. It's about respecting boundaries. You don't get to take what isn't yours anymore." For a moment, he looked like he might argue, but something in my face must have told him I wasn't backing down. He shoved the bill back in the jar and stormed off. It wasn't easy. Every confrontation left me shaky inside, but I forced myself to stay firm. Each time, Grandma Ruth was there to steady me, reminding me that holding the line was the only way things would change. "Grace," she said one night as we washed dishes together, "your father's not used to accountability. He's been dodging it his whole life. Your mother enables him. Ethan copies him. Lily might be different. But you're showing all of them a new way. Don't back down." And I didn't. Within days, the repayment agreement was already in motion. The first payment came from the refund on their changed flights, just like Grandma had predicted. It wasn't the full amount, but it was something. I made sure to get receipts, photocopies, everything documented. "No wiggle room. Add it to their tab," Grandma said with grim satisfaction as she slid the paperwork into a neatly labeled folder. It was strange, watching my parents adjust to a reality where I wasn't their pushover anymore. My dad tried to reassert control a few times, puffing up his chest and declaring, "I'm the head of this household." I stared him down and answered calmly, "And I'm the one holding you accountable. You signed that agreement. You don't get to pretend it doesn't exist." His face would turn red, but each time he backed down. Slowly, he was realizing I wasn't the same Grace he had left behind when they ran off to the Caribbean. Lily, on the other hand, surprised me. She actually tried. She helped around the house, asked me about my final semester, and even apologized again for using my credit card without permission in the past. I didn't see it before, she admitted. One night. But you've been carrying all of us for years. I'm sorry I was part of that. I believed her. There was sincerity in her eyes I hadn't seen before. Ethan, though, remained stubborn. He sulked, rolled his eyes, and muttered about how family shouldn't treat family like business partners. I wanted to scream at him sometimes, but I forced myself to stay calm. This isn't business, Ethan, I told him once. It's respect. Something this family has been missing for a long time. Grandma was my anchor through it all. Whenever my parents tried to guilt me, she cut them off with sharp reminders. Davy G. James Miller, she would snap at my dad, using his full name, like she had when he was a boy. This mess is of your making, not Grace's. She is teaching you responsibility, something I failed to do. It was hard not to tear up when she said things like that. For so long, I had felt alone in this fight. Now, for the first time, I wasn't. And slowly, so slowly, I almost didn't notice it started working. The signed repayment agreement hung on the fridge like a mirror, forcing my parents to face their own choices every time they went to grab milk or leftovers. The first payment, though small, made them realize this wasn't just talk. The new locks reminded them that the house wasn't entirely theirs anymore. The spreadsheets and bills forced them to see, in black and white, the reality of their irresponsibility. It didn't change them overnight, of course. My dad still tried to dodge responsibilities. My mum still whined about sacrifices. Ethan still acted like I was being dramatic. But the excuses were running out. They couldn't pretend anymore. And Grace Miller, the girl who had always forgiven, always sacrificed, always bent, was learning something new. I was learning how to stand. Tall. A week after their return, I packed my bags to head back to Chicago for the start of my final semester. The tension in the house was still there, but something else was too something new. A shift. As I zipped my suitcase shut, Lily hugged me tight. "I'll call you," she whispered. "And Grace, I really mean it. I want to do better." I hugged her back. "Then do it." When I left for the airport, my parents didn't say much. My dad grumbled about work. My mum hugged me stiffly, murmuring something about hoping I wasn't mad forever. Ethan just waved, looking guilty but saying nothing. But Grandma Ruth, she walked me to the car, hugged me tight, and whispered, "You did it, Grace. You changed the course of this family. Don't ever forget that." As the plane lifted off, heading back to Chicago, I felt both exhausted and lighter than I had in years. For once, I wasn't carrying their weight anymore, and even though I knew the road ahead with my family wouldn't be easy, I also knew one thing for sure: things would never go back to the way they were. When my plane touched down in Chicago, it felt like stepping into another life. The city was cold, busy, and familiar. My tiny studio apartment welcomed me back with its squeaky heater and stacks of nursing textbooks still piled on the desk. For the first time since the nightmare of Christmas began, I felt a sense of normalcy. Grandma Ruth's loan had bought me time. With her help, I registered for my final clinical rotations just before the deadline. That relief was enormous. The thought of nearly losing everything still haunted me, but I had managed to hold on to my dream by the thinnest thread. Still, the weight of what had happened with my family never left my shoulders. I knew I couldn't just move on. The repayment agreement hung heavy in the background of my mind. It wasn't only about the money, it was about whether they would finally change a week into the semester. I got my first video call from home. My mum's face popped up on the screen, looking tired. Dad was in the background, silent. They reported the first official repayment, $1,000 transferred into my account, partly from their flight refunds and partly from selling some cruise souvenirs. It wasn't much compared to what they owed, but it was a start. I made sure to screenshot the transaction and file it into the repayment folder Grandma had organized. Proof mattered. Over the next few weeks, we had regular calls. I demanded updates each Sunday evening. At first, my parents treated it like a chore, sighing and rolling their eyes. But the more I held firm, the more they began to take it seriously. Dad even admitted once gruffly, "I picked up some weekend consulting work. Pays decent. It'll help with the repayments." I almost didn't believe him. But when the next transfer came, in another $600, I realized he was telling the truth. My mum surprised me too. She started cutting back on her shopping habits. I saw her listing items online: clothes, unused, kitchen gadgets, even some old furniture. "We're downsizing," she said defensively, as though she had to justify it. But I could see the small shift. She was actually trying. The most surprising change, though, came from Ethan. At first, he resisted the hardest. He sulked during calls, acted annoyed, and threw in snide comments like, "This whole thing is overblown." But then, one evening, he showed me his phone. "I downloaded this budgeting app," he muttered, almost embarrassed. Trying to get my spending under control, I blinked. "Really?" He shrugged. "Yeah, and I picked up extra shifts at the studio. Figured it was time to pull my weight." For once, I believed him. Something had cracked in his stubbornness. Lily was the most genuine of all. She called me separately one night, her voice soft. "Grace, I just want to say I'm sorry again. I didn't realize how much I took from you until I watched you stand up to all of us. You're stronger than I ever knew, and I want to be like that too." Her words made my chest ache in the best way. Maybe there was hope, after all. Back in Chicago, I poured myself into my final semester. Clinical rotations were brutal long hours on my feet, caring for patients, juggling assignments, but I felt more focused than ever. Maybe it was the fire that had been lit inside me over Christmas. Maybe it was the determination not to let my parents' selfishness ruin everything I'd worked for. Every night, I reminded myself I was almost there. Just a few more months. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. There were setbacks. One evening, I got a call from Grandma Ruth. Her voice was tight with frustration. "Your mother dipped into the repayment fund. Claimed it was just a small amount for a sale at the department store." I confronted her, and she promised to replace it next week. "But Grace, this is exactly the kind of nonsense we're fighting against." My chest tightened. "Do you think she actually put it back?" "She will," Grandma said firmly. "I made it clear if she doesn't, there will be consequences. And this time, I mean it." I believed her. Grandma had found her steel, and nothing was going to shake it. Another time, my dad called me late at night, trying to argue. "Grace, do you really need us to repay the full $10,000? You're doing fine now. You'll graduate. Isn't that enough?" I held the phone tight, anger boiling. "No, Dad, it's not enough. You don't get to steal from me and then decide when you've done enough to make it right. You signed the agreement. You pay it back every penny." He sighed heavily, muttered something about me being stubborn, and hung up. But the next week, another payment arrived. Small, but progress. Even though my family wasn't perfect, even though they stumbled, I realized something important. They were at least trying. For the first time in my life, they were being forced to face the consequences of their actions. And as hard as it was working. Grandma Ruth and I kept in close contact too. She had promised to move part-time to Chicago after I graduated, and the thought of having her close gave me comfort. She was my anchor, my partner in this fight. Without her, I don't know if I would have had the courage to stand up at all. By March, The snow in Chicago began to melt. My clinicals were grueling, but I thrived under the pressure. Every time I felt like giving up, I remembered that Christmas note on the fridge, and it fueled me to push harder. Meanwhile, back in Springfield, the repayment folder on the refrigerator was slowly filling with receipts, transaction records, and documentation. Proof that my family was finally doing something right. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't fast, but it was real. And for the first time in years, I felt a strange new thing when I thought about my family. Hope spring rolled into summer faster than I expected. Between clinicals, exams, and endless studying, the days blurred together. It wasn't until I got the email from the registrar, "Congratulations, you are cleared to graduate," that I realized I had actually made it. I sat frozen at my desk, in my tiny Chicago apartment, staring at the screen. Tears filled my eyes. For months, I had worried that Christmas would be the end of my dream, that losing those funds would mean I'd never wear a cap and gown, never pin my nursing badge to my chest. But here I was. Against all odds, I had made it. The first person I called wasn't my mom, or my dad, or even Lily. It was Grandma Ruth. When she picked up, I could hear the TV faintly in the background, probably one of her old detective shows. "Well, look who it is," she said warmly. "Don't tell me you're calling just to check in." I could barely get the words out. "Grandma, I did it. I'm graduating." There was silence for a beat. Then her voice cracked with pride. "Oh, Grace, I knew you would. I never doubted you for a second." That night, she insisted on calling half her church friends to tell them the news. "Our Grace is going to be a nurse," she bragged. She fought for it, and she won. When graduation weekend finally came, I walked across the stage in my white uniform, my nursing pin gleaming under the bright auditorium lights. The applause echoed, but what mattered most was looking out into the crowd and seeing Grandma Ruth, standing taller than I thought she could, clapping with tears streaming down her cheeks. My parents were there too, along with Ethan and Lily. They clapped politely, but I could tell the pride wasn't as deep or as raw as Grandma's. Still, they had shown a hand for once that counted. After the ceremony, my mom hugged me stiffly, whispering, "We're proud of you." My dad muttered something about me proving him wrong. Ethan gave me a half smile and said, "Guess you did it, huh?" And Lily, she wrapped me in the kind of hug that felt real, whispering, "You inspire me, Grace." It wasn't perfect, but it was something. That weekend, Grandma made good on her promise. With the help of some church friends, she packed up her Springfield house and moved into a small apartment not far from my place in Chicago. "I'm not getting any younger," she joked as we unpacked her boxes. "And besides, I like the idea of living near my favorite granddaughter." Having her close was a comfort I didn't know I needed. After years of feeling like my family only took from me, Grandma gave endlessly. Her presence grounded me. Meanwhile, the repayment agreement continued. By summer, my parents had managed to pay back nearly half of what they owed. It wasn't always smooth. There were still arguments. My dad complained constantly about working extra hours. My mum groaned about selling off her designer purses. Ethan slipped up once, spending money he promised to contribute, but Grandma came down hard on him, and he replaced it the next month. But progress was progress. I kept every record in a binder, just like Terry had advised. Every transfer, every receipt. Evidence that change was possible even for my family. One night in July, as Grandma and I sat on her balcony drinking iced tea, she sighed deeply. "You know, Grace, I think they're finally learning. Slowly, painfully, but learning." I thought about that. "Do you think they'll ever really change, Grandma? Or is this just temporary because they have no choice?" She smiled faintly. "People rarely change because they want to. They change because they have to. But sometimes that's enough. It forces them to grow into better versions of themselves." Her words stuck with me. By August, I had passed my licensing exam. Officially, legally, I was a nurse. My first job offer came from a hospital downtown. It wasn't glamorous. The hours were long, the pay modest, but it was the start of the life I had fought so hard for. When I called my parents to tell them, my mom actually sounded proud. "That's wonderful, Grace," she said. "We'll come visit once you're settled in." And for the first time, I didn't feel dread at the thought of their visit. Lily called separately, her voice bubbling with excitement. "I got accepted into a teacher prep program," she said. "I didn't think I could do it, but you made me believe I could." I couldn't stop smiling. If all of this, the pain, the confrontation, the endless fights, had led to Lily believing in herself, maybe it was worth it. That fall, Grandma Ruth and I celebrated with a quiet dinner at her apartment. No drama, no guilt, no chaos, just the two of us. A home-cooked meal and laughter. For the first time in my life, I felt something I had never truly felt before when it came to my family. Peace by the time fall rolled around. Life in Chicago had settled into a rhythm. My days were long 12-hour shifts at the hospital, late nights charting, early mornings grabbing coffee before the sun came up. But it was the life I had fought for. And despite the exhaustion, I loved it. Grandma Ruth had slipped comfortably into her new apartment, just a few blocks from mine. She made friends quickly, hosting card nights with her neighbors and volunteering at the local food pantry. Every Sunday, we had dinner together. She always cooked too much, claiming, "I don't know how to make food for just 2 people." Meanwhile, back in Springfield, my parents were still trudging along the repayment plan. Each month, small transfers showed up in my account. Not enough to wipe the debt quickly, but steady. I documented every payment in the binder, checking them off like steps on a long staircase. But just as things felt stable, the crisis hit one Sunday evening as I was leaving. Grandma's, my phone buzzed. It was my mum. Her voice was high-pitched, frantic. "Grace, we're in trouble." My stomach clenched. "What happened?" "It's your father," she said, words tumbling out fast. "The company cut his hours budget, cuts or something. And without that extra consulting income, we can't keep up with the repayments. We need more time." I sat on the curb outside Grandma's building, my breath clouding in the chilly air. The old fear crept back in, fear that this was it. That they'd slip back into excuses and I'd lose everything I'd built. "Mom," I said slowly, "I understand you're stressed. But the agreement doesn't change. You still owe the money." "But Grace," she cried, "we're barely scraping by. Do you want us to lose the house? Do you want your brother and sister to suffer?" The guilt hit hard, like it always did. But I closed my eyes and pictured that note on the fridge at Christmas. "Be back soon. Don't worry about us." They hadn't. Worried about me then? Why should I crumble now? "No, Mom," I said firmly. "I don't want you to suffer. But I also won't let you make your problems mine again. You signed the agreement. You'll figure it out." She sniffled into the phone, then went quiet. The next day, Dad called. His voice was sharp, angry. "Grace, you're being unreasonable. Circumstances have changed. A good daughter would understand." I felt the old tremor in my hands, but I steadied my voice. "A good father wouldn't steal from his daughter in the first place. You'll find a way, Dad. Sell something, cut back, pick up side work, but the payments don't stop." There was a long pause before he snapped, "You're cold," and hung up. The following week was tense. Payments didn't arrive on the scheduled day. I half expected them to default, to walk away from everything we had worked for. But then, 3 days later, the transfer came through. Smaller than usual, but there, alongside it, a message from Lily. "Don't be mad at me, but I sold some of my stuff online to make up part of the payment. I didn't want you to think we were giving up." Tears stung my eyes as I read her message. "My little sister, the one who used to roll her eyes and follow Ethan's lead, was now the one holding the family accountable. Over the next few weeks, I learned more. My dad had taken on night shifts, driving for a rideshare company. My mum was clipping coupons, something I had never seen her do in my life. Ethan had started freelancing online, begrudgingly admitting it pays better than I thought. They weren't happy about it. They grumbled, argued, and tried to guilt me every step of the way. But they did it, because now they had no other choice. One evening, Lily called me again, her voice soft. "You know, Grace, this whole thing, it's changing them. They're not the same as they were before. They're learning what it means to work for something." I smiled faintly, though my chest ached. "Do you believe that, Lily? Or are you just hoping?" "I believe it," she said firmly, "because I'm living it too. Watching you stand up, it made me realize I don't have to stay small either. I'm applying for scholarships. I want to pay for school myself without depending on them." Her words filled me with pride. Meanwhile, Grandma Ruth kept reminding me to stay strong. "Don't let them tug at your heartstrings too hard, Grace," she said. As we folded laundry together, "Sympathy is fine, but boundaries keep you safe. They're learning because you held the line. Don't let go now." She was right. By winter, the repayments were slower, but they hadn't stopped. The crisis had forced them to cut deeper, work harder, and face their mistakes. And though they hated every second of it, I knew this was the only way real change could happen. It wasn't easy, and it wasn't pretty, but for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of what my parents might do next, because I finally understood something. I wasn't the weak one in this family. I was the strong one, and they knew it. By the time another Christmas rolled around, everything felt different. I was no longer the same Grace Miller who had come home the year before, broken and crying in her childhood bedroom. I was Grace Miller, registered nurse, working 12-hour shifts in Chicago, paying my own bills, and standing on my own 2 feet. Life wasn't easy. It was exhausting, messy, overwhelming at times, but it was mine. And that made all the difference. Grandma Ruth and I decorated her little apartment together that December, stringing up lights and baking cookies. The glow of her Christmas tree filled the room, and I couldn't help but think about the empty house the year before, the one with no decorations, and no family waiting for me. How far we had come since then. The repayment agreement had been hard, painful. Even my parents complained, fought, and dragged their feet. There were months they barely scraped together the payment, but they never stopped. And slowly, painfully, the debt shrank. By December, they had repaid nearly all of it. The binder I kept thick with receipts, bank transfers, and signatures was almost complete. Proof that for once in their lives, my parents had followed through. The money mattered, yes, but what mattered more was what came with it. My dad, for all his grumbling, had learned to work steady hours again. He still hated accountability, but he couldn't escape it anymore. My mum, who once treated spending money like a hobby, was learning restraint. She clipped coupons, tracked expenses, and even bragged once about paying off a credit card. Ethan was changing too. Slowly, he had started freelancing seriously, building something of his own instead of just coasting. He still complained, still rolled his eyes, but he was working, really working. And Lily's sweet. Lily was thriving. She had earned a scholarship and was starting her own path toward becoming a teacher. She called me constantly, her voice filled with excitement. "Grace," she told me one night, "I wouldn't have even applied if it weren't for you. You showed me we don't have to accept the way things have always been." Her words made every fight, every tear, every sleepless night worth it. On Christmas Eve, Grandma and I hosted a small dinner at her apartment. Nothing fancy, just roast chicken, mashed potatoes, and her famous pie. My parents, Ethan and Lily all drove in from Springfield. I won't lie, I was nervous. Old wounds don't just vanish because the calendar flips. But when they arrived, something was different. Dad shook my hand awkwardly, but sincerely. "We made the last payment this week," he said, clearing his throat. "Debt's done. You're square." I looked at him, stunned. I hadn't expected him to say it out loud. I nodded slowly. "Thank you." Mum hugged me a little tighter than usual. "We're trying, Grace," she whispered. "It's not easy, but we're trying." Ethan gave me a tired smile. "Still think you're bossy, but maybe you were right." And Lily hugged me like she always did, whispering, "You saved us, Grace. You saved me." We sat down to eat, and for the first time in years, it actually felt like family. Not perfect, not healed completely, but real, honest after dinner. Grandma tapped her glass with her spoon, drawing everyone's attention. Her voice was soft but steady. "This year taught us something important. Family isn't about taking, it's about giving, about sacrifice, and about change." Grace showed us that. She reminded us what it means to be accountable, to be responsible, to truly love each other. We owe her more than money, we owe her gratitude. The room was quiet. My dad cleared his throat. My mum dabbed at her eyes. I sat there, stunned, humbled, overwhelmed. For so long, I had been the one begging for scraps of love, of attention, of respect. And now, for the first time, I felt it flowing back toward me. That night, when I walked home through the softly falling snow, the city lights twinkling all around me, I thought about the girl I had been a year ago, the girl who found Grandma Ruth alone in that cold, empty house, eating leftovers while everyone else celebrated in the Caribbean. That girl thought she had lost everything, but really, she had just begun. Because sometimes, losing what you thought was family is the only way to find what family is supposed to be. And for the first time in my life, I felt truly free.